So surprisingly, the beautiful people of this channel want me to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh once again. And I say surprisingly because, well, I never have anything good to say. I think at this point, if you're a fan of this channel, you know that I'm not a big fan of the current game. I'm not a big fan of the meta. But if people want to listen to me talk about it and rant or just give my opinion on what's going on, I am happy to do so because I do stay on top of the game. And I believe it or not, I do still play the current game, even though most of my time is spent with Goat and Edison and all these different Time Wizard formats and even now Rush Duel. I do still play the current game and I don't completely hate it. I just have a lot of opinions and a lot of criticisms for it because honestly, I want it to go back to being as great of a game as it used to be. Right? I think that most people that watch this channel at this point know I'm kind of a Yugi boomer. Most of my takes on the current game are negative, but honestly, like I'm not gonna sit here and just lie to you and pretend like I'm liking the game or pretend like I'm excited with the results that we're seeing coming out. Pretend like I'm excited with the current meta. I can't be like that. I'm just gonna give you my honest opinion, always. And currently, that opinion of the game is pretty negative. So I try to diversify my content as much as I can. I try, even when I cover Yu-Gi-Oh, to not repeat the same points and go over different things. But if there is a predominant tone of negativity, that's just because I'm predominantly not feeling super hyped about the game. I don't mind talking about it. Clearly, that seems to be what the people that are subbed to this channel want to hear, or at least a good chunk of them. So I'm happy to provide that. But so far, my opinion hasn't changed. I think what I will do is I will split this video in two parts. The first part, we are going to talk about the famed $1,000 tier 0 format here for Snake Eyes and how it went down on, YCS Las Vegas, my opinion on that, my opinion on where the game currently stands as of right now. And then at the other half of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my relationship with Yu-Gi-Oh currently, why sometimes it can be difficult to do content for it, even though I know that a lot of people seem to want that. And I'm going to talk about Yu-Gi-Tubers in general because I watch a lot of Yu-Gi-Tubers, and I think that a lot of people that are subscribed to this channel also do because it seems to be the content that people want to see and that they're seeking out. So I'm going to talk a lot about them as well and that entire genre and topic in general. So first half of the video, I'm just going to talk here again about the YCS Las Vegas. We're going to talk about the something like 80 or 81% Snake Eyes decks and Fire King Snake Eyes topping the YCS, and why I think that that's terrible for Yu-Gi-Oh. And I feel that way since tier limits. Honestly, my opinion is kind of the same, and I'm gonna kind of let you know a little bit what I think about mirror matches and tier 0 formats in general, and we're going to revisit a little bit about the price points of the game. So before we get into my general opinions of things and about the other topics I mentioned at the beginning of the video, let's just talk really quick about what happened on YCS Las Vegas, just as far as what's being played and my opinion on it. No surprise, we basically saw Snake Eyes and Fire King Snake Eyes. That's basically what it was. On the top final 16 there, again, we saw a lot of pure Snake Eyes, more Fire King Snake Eyes decks. We saw Voiceless Voice, we saw a little bit of Flute Wanderies, a little bit of Purelli, and a little bit of Rescue Ace. And then when we got to the top 8, it was pretty much all Snake Eye or Fire King Snake Eye. And we did see some Voiceless Voice there, which was cool just for the sake of diversity. If it was literally just Snake Eye versus Snake Eye Fire King, that would have been terrible. This reminds me a lot of the Tier 0 Tier Limits format, which I have strong opinions on, and I think that everybody does have their opinions on it as well. But this is pretty much what we saw here. So we are clearly entering another Tier 0 format, which I'm going to talk about that because we have seen either Tier 0s or, as some people consider it, for a while now, it seems to be the norm, right? So we had Tier Limits, then we have Kashtira, now we have this. It seems that there is no way to escape tier 0s right now because of the current business model of the game. And I've talked about this in the past, and I'm going to reiterate this again. It's a point that I've made over and over. Not only why I don't think it's a good thing for the game, but also why I think it's being done intentionally and deliberately. So some people in the community don't have problems with mirror matches. I think especially on the more pro side of players, on the people who are really competing on the game, a lot of them tend to not have as big of a problem with tier 0 formats and a lot of mirror matches, as long as the mirror matches are fun. I tend to not fall in that category at all. I think that mirror matches are horrible for the game, and not just because I don't like playing the same thing. I think the main reason why I don't play as much Yu-Gi-Oh without being good in Edison right now is because exactly because of mirror matches. I get tired of playing the same mirror matches or playing against the same decks over and over. That fatigues me not from the game, it fatigues me from like the meta. So in a game like Master Duel, like I just like playing ranked on Master Duel for the most part. It fatigues me to play against the same decks over and over just from a grinding repetition standpoint, right? As far as the technical part of it, if I wasn't a YCS, maybe it wouldn't be as big of a deal, but it still feels like a grind, and it's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be a grind. I feel like when you're playing against the same thing over and over, the game stops being fun and it becomes a grind of some sorts. Now, from an outsider perspective, I think I've said this, and I think this is pretty obvious. If you are trying to make the game like hype it up, kind of how League of Legends does their worlds, and people who don't play the game can watch, even though they probably don't know what the heck is going on. There are different champions, there are different strategies and different things going on. For the sake of viewership, it's more entertaining to see different things going on. If you're an outsider, right, or somebody who used to play the game and you remember the diversity the game used to have, when you are looking at a current YCS, a current world tournament or nationals, whatever it is, or locals, if you see the same decks, it for me, if I was no longer into Yu-Gi-Oh, that would not prompt me to want to get back into it. If I were to be someone who is no longer into the game and I saw a YCS and I see all these different cool decks, I'm like, man, there's so much to choose from. There's so many different strategies and a lot of diversity. I am more inclined as a viewer to actually watch or even be wanting to get back into the game. If I, as a viewer, am seeing the same strategy and the same decks over and over in mirror matches, from a spectator perspective, I think that that's horrible for the game. I think that that just says, okay, there's just one thing that's broken, and if you're not playing the one thing that's broken, you can't compete. I think that turns a lot of people off from wanting to get into the game or re-enter the game, because a lot of people are like me. They go through phases where they take breaks in general from the game, where they will play the current meta for, the month or whatever it is. The meta will shift. They're not as into the meta anymore. They take like a 5-month break, 6 months break, whatever it is, a year break, and then eventually they look into getting back into the game or playing the current format. And for me, if I take a 1-year break and I'm looking to get into the game again, this happened with tier elements in particular. Actually, tier elements made me stop playing the game for a while, but just saying, like if I wanted to get back into, which is kind of Kashtira did that for me, I look at it and I'm just seeing the same 1 or 2 decks being played over and over. For me, I want to still set out for a little longer until the format becomes more diverse. I know that frankly, I think it's a pretty niche and slight percentage of the community. That is not as big of a problem, maybe a slight hyper competitive side of part of the community. But I think that for the vast majority of people, we don't want to see the same thing. We don't want to see mirror matches. That turns me off from getting back into the game. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the $1,000 mark that people are saying for the current Tier 0, because the current strategy that's mostly viable is very expensive, and that's what people are saying it costs $1,000. I've already done a video titled, Is Yu-Gi-Oh! Too Expensive? You can check that out. In fact, I encourage you to watch my playlist for Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically, because a lot of topics I've already discussed, and I try very hard with my content not to farm it, and not to make it a grind, and not to repeat the same points over and over. I try to bring a fresh perspective or something, at least something new, into every video. So you might find enjoyment in looking at those other videos if you enjoyed this type of topic. So I encourage you to take a look at the playlist, because there might be things that I've already talked about that I'm not going to keep reiterating as in depth as I did in those videos. And it might be worth checking out for the sake of if you enjoy listening to my opinion on these things. But I will say that I will give my opinion on Tier 0 formats, which I think I've already made clear, but maybe I haven't in other videos. I really don't like Tier 0 formats, and I really don't like Yu-Gi-Oh's current business model, and I've talked about this a lot. Yu-Gi-Oh is a game that claims not to have rotations, and that is a lie. Yu-Gi-Oh does have rotations, and it comes in the form of a ban list. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have rotations as a marketing point to say, hey, all your favorite decks like Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, and all the old stuff you used to play. It's not banned. You can still play it. And look, there's even maybe a little bit of new support that you can throw in there and for the game to still be, viable for you to play with those decks. And that's just a little bit of a lie because competitively speaking, those decks are never going to be viable again, and they're just not. And I think that one big thing that Yu-Gi-Oh takes pride on and a lot of people enjoy is, again, the fact that the game does not have rotation like, say, Magic and Pokemon do. But I do think that that is a I do think that that is a gimmick of some sort. I do think that it is a little bit disingenuous to say that Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have rotation because it does. It just comes in the form of a different way of getting people to spend their money. I've done a satire about this. You can look at one of my videos that I made here where I used a bunch of voiceovers. It was how Konami came up with tier limits or something like that. It's a satire essentially explaining that the business model for Yu-Gi-Oh is go ahead and come out with something new that's broken so that everybody goes and buys it and spends their money on this new broken deck that comes out tier 0, whether it be tier limits, whether it be Kashtira, whether it be now Snake Eyes. Go ahead and make that so everybody has to throw their old deck away and they spend all their money on this. And then before the game starts getting boring and people get sick of seeing it in a month, 2 months, we're going to ban it. And then we're going to come up with some other thing that's going to be the next tier 0 format or the next super strong deck. And then we're going to ban it, nerf it down, and we're going to keep this cycle going over and over. The problem I have with Konami is you cannot tell me that these things always happen by accident, that these decks are released not with the intention of being top decks. And the problem that I have with that is there clearly are doing a form of rotation. If you look at how Yu-Gi-Oh used to be and how it is right now, obviously it's gone through major changes that might as well be rotations because things that used to be viable are just not viable at all anymore. And I frankly would almost prefer a rotation than the current thing we have going on because that causes the game to suffer from so much power creep that I've said this multiple times. The game is unrecognizable. And it's not because things change, times change, cards change. That's not the case at all. It's because in order to sell the new product, we need to make the new product better than the old product. It's just simple business, right? And that naturally creates a rotation. Whether you want to say Yu-Gi-Oh has rotation or not, through the ban list and through release of new cards that are clearly designed to overpower older sets, obviously that's a form of rotation. And anybody that thinks that it's not rotation, it's kind of fooling themselves. It absolutely is. They just don't call it that, but it is rotation. And again, I would prefer that they do actual rotation if they're even going to do that. What I really would prefer is they just do more formats and make those formats competitive, more of these Time Wizard formats that I enjoy more than the current game. But if you're not going to do that because you're scared of not selling new product, because you're not confident in your modern game, you don't believe in it, and you're afraid you're not going to sell as much of the newer product, you're going to lose sale to the old cards that people might already have or are cheaper. I think that says a lot about the current game and confidence they have on the current game, which they don't seem to have a lot if that's the business model. But if you're going to do that, at least don't lie and don't say that there isn't rotation. I think you should just, at that point, do put rotation. And I think that a more immediate solution to that would be launching several decks at once. The problem I have a little bit with Konami, I think you know the millions of problems I have, and I've just reiterated a lot of them. But I think that a way to avoid this whole tier 0 format thing is to release several new decks at once. They seem to release one really good deck at a time that completely dominates the format. And I know that that's not entirely the case, but I do think that if they're going to change completely how the format is working, instead of just launching one really good deck that completely dominates everything or two, they need to release like 20 or 30, like completely revamp the format. I think that's a way. It will make them more money, to be honest, but it will increase the diversity in the game. It's really annoying to always see the one new deck that comes out rising to the top and becoming the new tier 0 format. It's really annoying that Tier Limits comes out, it's the new best deck, nothing can compare to it. Then it gets banned. Then Kashtira comes out, nothing can compare with it, then it gets banned. Then Snake Eyes comes out and Fire Kings, nothing can compete with it, and then inevitably it will get banned. Like, I'm tired of this. Why not release 10 of them at once? Why not release 20 of these decks at once? fine. If you're so hellbound on doing the power creep thing and completely getting rid of the old sets and replacing them with the new ones, at least add some diversity there, because I really think that mirror matches are not good for the game. I certainly hate playing mirror matches. I get sick of the game because of that really quick. But from an outsider coming in or watching in perspective, it's not good for the game. Now we'll talk about the price point, because a lot of people are now calling this the $1,000 tier 0 format. I've made a video titled, again, Is Yu-Gi-Oh! Too Expensive? Again, I encourage you to watch my playlist where I discuss this more in depth. I have a big problem with this, and this is why I own a lot of paper Yu-Gi-Oh, but I don't play it anymore. I do have other reasons for not enjoying paper Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. The way the game flows and works is complicated. It's gone to the point where you see in YCSs and Worlds so many judge calls from the pros. If you watched YCS Las Vegas, there was a lot of dubious plays and cheating happening. When you have a game that is so complicated to play, it becomes, not only does it show a flaw in the game itself, but at that point you need the assistance of a computer. I've said this, I'm a firm believer that paper Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of gonna die, I think, because of how the power creep is happening and how the game is becoming more and more complicated and there's more things to keep track of. There's only so much that you can humanely keep track of, to the point where it becomes necessary the assistance of a computer to keep track of things. And like it or not, while people that play the game currently and understand what's going on, for people on the outside, there is so much deck search, shuffling, transitions, and things like that, that from an outsider watching in, Yu-Gi-Oh is not enjoyable to even watch anymore. Cards don't stay enough on the field for them to matter. Things transition too often. Like I said, deck search happens too often. It's too funky and weird to watch as a spectator. So I think that that causes it to lose a lot of the spectator value, like I'm saying. But as far as the price point, I think that, it's completely absurd. I've said this multiple times. This is another problem with tier 0 formats. When you have a tier 0 format and you don't print enough of the cards, which they don't do enough reprints, and there's not enough supply of these cards, inevitably the demand will be there and it's going to spike the prices, right? So the reason why tier 0 right now, Snake Eyes, although not every tier 0 is uber expensive, it tends to be expensive, but not this expensive. When you funnel all of the meta gameplay to only having one or two viable decks, you are driving up the cost of those decks as well. That's another problem that's caused by not releasing enough product all at once and doing these incremental releases on products. That's one of the problems, and another of the problems of over tuning these cards and inevitably straight up making them a tier 0 with the intention of getting everyone to buy it. You're inflating the secondary market as well because of the demand, right? So that's a huge problem by itself. I think that a lot of the cost, like we saw with bonfires, like we're seeing now with Snake Eyes, a lot of this cost is artificially driven by the fact that there's not enough product being printed, number one. But number two, again, yeah, if you make a tier 0 format and only one deck is viable, there's going to be a demand for those cards. So the price is going to increase. It's inevitable, and it's a very flawed and crappy business model for the players. I think I've said this plenty, but I really, really think this needs to change. I keep saying that, and I've said in multiple videos that different formats for the game would help this a lot. Having different formats, different tiers of play with products that are released exclusively for those tiers and formats of play that already exist, but confining the new products to that power level, I think could be a solution. If we are going to keep on this model where we just print new cards for the sake of printing them stronger than the last one so that people have to get rid of their old decks and buy new ones, at the very least, I think that more of it has to be released at once. I'm getting really tired of just seeing one thing that gets released completely dominating the format. It's getting really annoying. I wouldn't mind if there were 20 new decks that get released, and there are all pretty well balanced, where we have a pretty diverse competitive format between these new decks that get released. Just pushing out one at a time or one or two the way that they're doing, and over tuning specific decks to where it almost seems like they want that deck to sell. That's why they're making it so strong and above and beyond the rest, clearly knowing that immediately after they're going to do like a ban list and totally nerf the deck. I think it's a really disingenuous business marketing strategy. I think it's a really bad way to make business. I think it's bad for the game, and I think it kills a lot of the fun of the game. It makes people like me not want to get into the paper game. Forget the technical problems I have with the game. Forget the other things I'm saying of how I feel like the game requires now the assistance of a computer. Just from a financial standpoint, if there is only one deck that's viable, and that deck that I had up until last month used to be my favorite, and now I don't get to play it anymore because there's only one tier 0 deck that's viable for this tournament, and then on the next it'll be a new one. At that point, you start sitting out on them until you can save up money or whatever to get into it again. And frankly, for me, even if I did have the money, even if I'm willing to spend it, you cannot convince me to spend $1,000 on cardboard, man. Like, I don't mind throwing a little bit of money here on Master Duel every now and again, but I've gone to the point with Yu-Gi-Oh where I'm consumer fatigued. Like, I don't play paper Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. Number one reason is because I can't justify the cost. And I've talked a lot about this, and it's not just a matter of like being able to afford it or not, or having it or not. You can invest your money instead. You can do other things with your money, even if you're really rich. Like, I like cars. I'd rather buy a nice car than always buy the newest and better deck that comes out. I would like to do anything else with my money, even donate my money. I would prefer doing that than like getting into tier 0 Snake Eyes format. I just don't see the appeal. I don't know who likes this. Clearly, a lot of people like it. Otherwise, the game would have died already. But I don't know who those people are outside of Reddit. I've never met them in person. I don't know who they are. Actually, most of them are now playing other games like Flesh and Blood or Magic Commander format, right? Most of the people I know that still play paper card games don't play Yu-Gi-Oh! For that reason. It's just too expensive, and the format changes too often. For a game that doesn't have rotation, it sure as hell seems like it does. Now, before I get into the second half of the video where I'm going to talk, I think I've already said a little bit about how I feel about current Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot on this channel and on this video as well. I alluded to a lot of it here on the first part of the video. What I am going to say, and I've said this again, go ahead and check out the playlist on my channel if you want to hear more of Yu-Gi-Oh! And more of my opinions, and this is a topic that interests you. I normally don't just cover, and I rarely cover, current stuff only. I talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, and a lot of times I'm talking about old Yu-Gi-Oh! Comparing with the new, or topics that aren't like this pertaining to the YCS Las Vegas. I don't usually do this. So check that out, because there could be a lot of things that I already talked about that you might find interesting. With that said, I will tell you my difficulty here sometimes with producing Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos and content in general. So this channel is not a big channel by any stretch. It's a very, very small channel with a very insignificant presence, right? But the videos that I've done that have made, most of them that have made more success, tend to be Yu-Gi-Oh! Related, which surprises me, because it seems like a lot of people are frustrated with the game, which is why they're gravitating to content creators like me and a lot of the things that I have to say. Maybe you just think my insights are interesting, or maybe you feel the same way about current Yu-Gi-Oh! But I don't mind doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Once a week, once every other week. I don't mind talking about it. Frankly, I didn't think that people would still want me to talk about it, because I've talked about it so much in this channel. And I can't just do Yu-Gi-Oh! On this channel. You got to understand that there's a lot of people that are here for the historic content that I've done. There's people that are here for the anime stuff, AMVs, and other things that I do. And frankly, I enjoy doing other things as well. YouTube is not my job, right? And I am a firm believer on not farming content. Like, I don't ever want to get to the point where I become a Yu-Gi-Tuber. I don't mind being labeled a Yu-Gi-Tuber. I don't mind doing, like, again, once a week, once every other week, talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, it's a pretty easy topic to discuss, covering ban lists. I don't mind talking about that. In fact, I ask and encourage everyone, if you're watching this video, to always comment what you want to see more of. If there's something you would have liked me to discuss, reiterate, or go into more detail again, let me know. Because sometimes for me, because this is not a channel with a specific niche, there are people that are subscribed to this channel for different reasons. Like, if you're here just for the anime stuff and you see that I made a Yu-Gi-Oh! Video, you're not even going to comment or watch the video probably. So it's hard for me to know that people want to see more of this or less of this. So I do encourage you to give me your opinion, and I do listen. I did a quick poll today, which I've never done, and just to see what people wanted me to make more content on, right? And so far, it's just mostly been Yu-Gi-Oh. The poll's only been up for a couple hours, and most people don't even see that. But I am gonna listen to things like that. If you want to see more of this, I have no problem with doing more Yu-Gi-Oh content. It's not all that I'm gonna do, but I don't mind doing it. So please give me feedback on that and what you want me to talk more about. If there's specific things you want me to cover on the Yu-Gi-Oh sphere or TCG sphere in general, let me know and I'm happy to do that. But one thing that I've noticed with it's not just YouTubers, it's any YouTuber that does this for a living and gets in some sort of niche. We have seen, or at least I've seen, time and time again, all these YouTubers either quit or take breaks from the game, or they just start playing older formats, or their content devolves into just saying bad things about the game, for a lack of a better word, or they force themselves to cover Yu-Gi-Oh news or come up with topics. Like, I'm not trying to throw shade on anyone in particular that does this, but a lot of the YouTubers I watch, you can tell they're out of things to say. They're burnt out of the game. They've been burnt out of the game for a long time, and they are not happy with the current format. They don't play the game competitively. They don't actively play the game anymore, and they keep finding things to talk about. And I don't mind doing that once a month, maybe once every other week. I don't mind doing that, but there's a lot of YouTubers that put out content daily or every other day, and all they talk about is Yu-Gi-Oh. I will never be able to be like that. I mean, I could try, but there will be a drop in quality. There will be repeating of the same points over and over if I do that. And I never want to be disingenuous. I feel like a lot of people on YouTube, they talk about things because it's their job. And I never want that, not necessarily YouTube, but I never want Yu-Gi-Oh to become my job because I will lose the love for it. And I'm already at a point where I'm not super happy with the game. If I just do content for Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm going to get even more sick of it. And I never want to make disingenuous videos or videos where I'm not being genuine, where I pretend like I'm enjoying the game, where I pretend like I like the way things are. I never want to do that. And I do see a lot of YouTubers forcing themselves. You'll see a video like a month ago, them saying like, hey, I need a break from the game, or I'm sick of this, I'm sick of that. And then, oh, next video, unboxing these packs, and this is where the ban list is, this is what the meta is, market watch. And you can tell like they're just doing this because it's their job, right? I never want to get to that point. So please bear with me. If you do want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, let me know, and let me know what you want me to talk about. But do understand that that will never be the only thing that I do on the channel, because number one, I never want to pigeonhole myself into doing just one type of content. I don't want to be a YouTuber. Like, I don't mind if I am, because I always talk about it at least once a month. But I don't want to do that because I don't play enough of the current game to be a YouTuber. I've lost a lot of my passion for the game because of the issues that I've been outlining. I only mostly play older formats and Master Duel. I don't even play the current paper game. I stay on top of the news, I stay on top of the things that are going on. I can give you my insights every now and again, but to make a channel exclusively dedicated to Yu-Gi-Oh, like some other people do, that's not something that I want to do, nor I can do. And also, I don't think it's genuine. Like, do you really want me to pretend that I'm enjoying something that I'm not? You know, a lot of the content that I see is so forced. Like, it's natural, right? Something becomes your job, you get tired of it. You lose love for it. You don't want to talk about it anymore. And these are people who enjoy the game for the most part. They enjoy the current game, a lot of them. Imagine if you already don't enjoy the current game very much to do content only on that. It's not just going to get stale for me, it's going to get stale for the audience too. But again, I don't mind talking about it every now and again. Just understand that that's not the only thing that I'm going to talk about. And if there are other things you'd like me to cover, let me know, because a lot of times I don't really know what people want to hear about. With that said, also, don't think for a second that I dread doing any of these videos. You know, there's a reason why my last upload from Yu-Gi-Oh was 2 months ago, and why I'm doing one now. Enough time goes by, I don't mind talking about the subject again. I don't even mind doing something like a podcast dedicated to something like that. I don't mind. It just will not be the only thing that I cover on this channel or that I talk about, simply because of fatigue, simply because of repetitiveness, right? And, you know, I don't want to have creator fatigue. That's not something that I ever want to have. I don't want to be in a position where I'm sick of talking about something, but I have to because that's my job. Like, it's not my job. Anything I've ever talked about in this channel, including Yu-Gi-Oh, any opinion I've ever given, I have no sponsors. I've made a total of like $6 since this channel's been monetized. I definitely don't make a living off of this. I have no obligation or personal incentive to only talk about one thing or do things that I don't want. Everything you've ever seen posted on this channel, if you look through my catalog of videos, every video that was ever made was because I wanted to talk about that and I wanted to make that video. Or someone suggested it, but I still wanted to talk about it. You'll never see me make a video for the sake of making it. That's just because it's not my job. Like, I'm not hating on anybody that is in that position where it is their job and they have to keep making videos on things that they don't want to talk about anymore. But it's really not the case for me. And I never want to lose that love for the videos that I'm putting out, because I think that not only the content will suffer, but I have a really hard time faking liking things that I don't, or faking wanting to do things that I don't. So I'm sure most people can understand that. I doubt that most people want YouTubers to talk about things that they're sick of or say things that they don't really mean for the sake of content, or pretend like they enjoy something for the sake of enjoying it. Like, I've thought about this a lot when people told me, hey, we want you to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh. It surprises me because I am not like I am an active player of the game, but I'm not somebody that's, actively competing and actively is enjoying the meta and has really good things to say about it. I think it shows it voices a lot of the grievances that people have. So it goes to show that even though most of my content is giving negative feedback to the game, that's kind of what people want to hear because they're feeling the same way. It's surprising to me for that reason. I think that says a lot about the current game. A lot of people feel the same way. But for that reason, I can't just talk negatively about Yu-Gi-Oh every single day for the rest of my life. I just can't. And I think that a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh tubers and YouTubers have put themselves in a position where they've quit their jobs and they've made a living out of talking about Yu-Gi-Oh. And at the time they talked about Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh was really fun. And it's since devolved into the mess that it is right now. And this is all they have. This is how they pay their bills. So they have to keep talking about it. And it just feels so forced and disingenuous. Like, a lot of the pro players, like, I'm not saying that people can't like the game. Like, there's obviously a lot of people that still really enjoy the game. It's still massively popular. But I do think that a lot of people are playing for the sake of nostalgia, and the content creators slash pro players slash hyper competitive players are playing it for the sake of making content. With that said, am I never going to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh again? Of course not. I'm probably going to talk about it again next week. There's a lot that I wanted to talk about and cover on this video, completely unrelated to the things I talk about, that I didn't. I don't mind making another one. All I'm saying is it's not what all that's going to be on this channel, simply for the fact that there isn't enough to talk about, right? I'm going to run out of subjects and I don't want to get burnt out. Now, finally, what I ask, and again, even if you ask for something, don't think that I don't read it. I read all my comments, even though I don't respond to them, every single one. I do read them. So if you want to make a suggestion, there is a specific part of Yu-Gi-Oh or TCGs or anything else you want me to talk about, or you like this video and you want me to keep doing more of them, let me know in the comments, because that gives me a little bit of guidance to also what people want to do. Like, I'm not always going to do what people want me to do every single video, but obviously I'm going to try to cater to the people that are watching me, right? So if this is something that you're enjoying watching, I can keep talking about it to an extent. So let me know. And again, for the fifth time, I encourage you to look at the playlist, and specifically for Yu-Gi-Oh, and you will see the different topics pertaining to this subject that I've already covered. Again, I don't like reiterating the same things over and over for the sake of farming content. I really try to make each and every video unique and at least bring some insights that I haven't before or have given more thought to. I do try to make the videos unique. So you will find different opinions that I probably will never repeat again or won't discuss in depth again in another video on that playlist. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Again, if you like this video, like it, subscribe. Let me know what you want me to cover next. Let me know if you want me to keep talking about this. Give me your opinion on current Yu-Gi-Oh, what you thought about YCS Las Vegas. Share in the comments what you want to see more of in general, what you would like there to be more discussions on, or just your opinion in general. I really like reading the comments, even the negative ones. Obviously, it's nicer to read comments that are either positive or just a opinion in general. I find that interesting. But if you didn't like it, you can always let me know. I do think that comments are super important. If you just watch this video passively and you've never posted a comment before, do post a comment because it does steer the type of content that I might make in the future. Thank you.